There we go.
And I'd like to call the Cable and Broadband Internet Commission to order. As far as just introductions real quick, we'll just go around the room. If you don't mind, I'll start. Rob Capone.
Jeff Avery. Gary Lau.
Jim Wilson.
You go. Or do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, Ryan Clark with AT&T.
Suzanne Wilson, Regulatory Counsel. And then Michael, if you want to go.
Sure, I'm Michael Rapp with AT&T. I'm the director of the network for all of New England and specifically this meeting for New Hampshire.
Great. Thank you. Looks like we lost Ash, but we'll see if he gets himself back in.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So if we'll just jump right into the conversation with AT&T.
Great. Well, thank you for having us today. I'm happy to be here. Again, my name is Ryan Clark. I'm External Affairs Director for AT&T here in New Hampshire. Don't live far away. I'm just over in Manchester, so I know the state well. And we just want to have a conversation. I know there's a few items you had sent us a letter about, kind of how is the network performing and how does it look in Portsmouth? Are there any barriers to building the network and what you all can do? So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that, and I'll certainly defer to Michael for some of the network specific aspects of the conversation. But just wanted to open up, and we've got a lot going on in the state of New Hampshire. We've been building out the network aggressively, especially also here in Portsmouth. There's a few good projects going on as well. I figured I'd start with a little bit of a background. Obviously, you all probably know our consumer network, our AT&T just customers nationally. Obviously, we provide cell service, as best as we can, and we've got a great network growing. We're continuing to invest. But we also have our FirstNet network, and I don't know if you all know what FirstNet is, but it's our public-private partnership with the federal government, where we have been tasked, and there's an RFP. The federal government put out an RFP, and we bid on it, and we were chosen to provide FirstNet to first responders. This came out of the 9/11 Commission. So on 9/11, obviously communication systems were overloaded, and that commission recognized that as a serious point of concern. Following that, they set up FirstNet Authority, which is a federal entity, and then FirstNet Authority partnered with AT&T, and AT&T is the provider of that network to first responders nationwide, but also obviously here in New Hampshire, and specifically here in the city of Portsmouth. Yep. We work closely with the police department, and I believe the fire department as well.
Yes, that's right.
And so FirstNet, since 2018 specifically, we've been building out our network. It exists on all of our commercial networks, but we also receive funding from the federal government to build out specific cell towers across the state of New Hampshire for FirstNet. Every FirstNet tower works as a commercial tower. Every commercial tower supports FirstNet. It's all tied into our big broad network that provides coverage. What makes FirstNet unique is it provides first responders with priority and preemption across our entire network. So think of anytime tourism is extremely prevalent here in Portsmouth. So say you're downtown on an extremely busy summer night, a lot of tourists, a lot of people eating dinner, what have you, and there's an event, the network could get congested for the public. But if you're a FirstNet customer, you would have access to the network kind of above, like I said, priority and preemption above our commercial users. Unless that commercial user dialed 911, then they would have priority as well. But if somebody's just trying to look on Instagram or Facebook or try to figure out what the best food is at X restaurant, that would not take precedent over a public safety user. So they would make sure they have access to the network connectivity. So that's been a big part of what we've been doing. And again, that's been since 2018. It's a 25-year contract with the federal government. So we're in it for the long haul, supporting our public safety. And so with that has come a variety of different solutions that we're providing, in-building solutions for public safety, outdoor solutions, improving our network, specifically here at Pease, and Michael can talk a little bit more about that. But we've really made it a focus to support our first responders where they need it and when they need it. A little bit in addition to that, I sent a few pieces of information. I know I looked or watched the Verizon.
Back up.
Michael.
And there's Ash.
Okay,
All right.
All right.
right, I don't know what happened.
Sorry, we lost you. Oh, you're
Sorry, I'm not quite sure. I'm in a great internet
No,
environment. So
We think it was our end.
I think it was
Okay.
on this side.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah,
No.
no,
I
no.
heard most everything you said, Ryan. I was only off for like maybe 20 seconds or so. So,
Great.
yeah.
All right, should I just keep going then?
Yep.
Okay, great. So that's kind of what we're doing from a public safety perspective. We really appreciate you conducting the survey and sending that feedback. We and Michael's team do a wonderful job of taking that feedback, assessing exact addresses, making sure that there aren't any specific issues, but they are constantly assessing the network to, troubleshoot, to find areas that need support and either work to improve that for a future project, or if there's any real-time troubleshooting that they can do to fix things. So any of that, all that information, all that feedback that you all gathered is something that's valuable that we can, take action on. So we've provided that to Michael's team. They have that information and they're working on assessing it as well. As I was mentioning, Suzanne, I sent some links over. I know the previous, there's some information already online about, whether it's Wi-Fi calling. We have some similar information that is already up online. So Wi-Fi calling can go to those customers. That can be a big asset to some customers who have maybe a specific dead spot at their home. Maybe it's good right outside their doorstep, but inside the home, which can sometimes be difficult for, depending on what type of material their house is made out of, it can make it more difficult for the wireless signal to penetrate the homes. But Wi-Fi calling inside, if they've got a good internet service, is extremely helpful. We sell cell boosters, which I sent a link to as well. So you can purchase a cell booster online, which you plug into your internet. And then that creates basically a wireless signal around that cell booster, usually inside a home. And then that allows you to use your cell service as normal inside your home if you've got a weak signal in your home. And then we also have an Internet Air product. I sent that along as well. It's an internet at the home product that we offer over our wireless signal. So you type in your address and say you don't have a good internet provider where you are. Portsmouth is a fairly big city, good infrastructure, but maybe there's outskirts that don't have good internet access. And this is a kind of a broadband internet product that we are selling. Again, you type your address in on the website and it tells you if you're eligible for that product or not. So those are some of the things I provided to you. I'll give Michael an opportunity to kind of jump in now and talk a little bit more specifically about the network. But feel free to ask questions, engage. We're happy to answer anything we can.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, hi again. So, most recent activity was out, I believe, outside the city of Portsmouth was the Stratham site that we just brought on in the late 2025. As Ryan indicated as well, we've been working very closely with Peace Air Force Base to do an installation on top of their water tank there. That's part of an initiative that we call Trifecta. It ties into a lot of the FirstNet initiatives that Ryan went through. We work with these military bases through the arms of the government at a higher level. They've gone across the country and prioritized bases bases that they feel necessary for coverage. When they have the air show there, we typically bring in a mobile asset, right? A cell on wheels, we call it, with all different types of frequencies and technologies to handle the influx of the crowd there. Um, but most importantly, what we've been really focusing our efforts on, particularly in Portsmouth, is capacity. We recently purchased a very large a spectrum buy of what we call C-band, which is 5G technology. We've deployed a portion of that C-band across every one of the sites in Portsmouth very recently. And within the next 2 weeks, we're adding between 40 and 60 megahertz of 5G spectrum across every site in the city of Portsmouth, which is a very, very significant capacity lift for the specific. I'll just speak to Portsmouth. Our average speeds, I did watch the YouTube video as well of your visit with Verizon. I know you had a lot of questions about, small cell versus, macro cell and coverage differences. All of that is generally accurate, for any carrier provider that you have in front of you. I'm happy to regurgitate or talk through any of those questions that you may have, and maybe a little bit different methodologies that we use, but generally speaking, it's the same for all carriers. One of the questions you asked on your letter to us is, do we have specific data complaints, for Portsmouth, and do you have records of that? Any escalations or any customer service or impacting areas that come in through our customer service department that cannot be explained via it's a handset or a site that's out for maintenance, or maybe it's down for whatever reason, ultimately ends up in my shop. And with that, we have specific people assigned, performance engineers that deal specifically with your geography, that look into each and every one of those complaints. And then we act on them as necessary. We use another a tool that Verizon uses, a separate tool that they explained to you and talked to you about. But we have a very similar tool. But one of the things they mentioned to you, and I'll reaffirm that, is there's much communication that happens between the cellular device and our network constantly, whether you're in service or out of service. And it reports those statistics back to our network for us to take action on. So even if you go into a complete dead spot, in a black hole of the earth, when you come back into the network, it reports all of those geographic locations of where you were and what that experience was. So we have a very good indication of all of the subscribers, that come into and out of every geographic portion of which we provide service. And we make decisions internally on the quantity of problems that may exist there, the capacity of problems that may exist there, the speeds in which these mobiles are generating traffic. Excuse me, the congestion that they may run into, all of the things that were generally described, to you by Verizon. Now, we do the same type of environment. So we start with a macro network, which are traditional cell sites, towers, water tanks, tops of buildings, high power macro cell sites, we'll call those. On average, as also was explained, 3 to 4 mile range, depending upon what you're trying to cover. And we often will bring those into a much smaller, area, so that we don't get interference. When we went from the old technologies to LTE rebroadcasts the same frequencies from every cell site. So what you really design a network today, not so much on, how much can you cover by a site, but independent or dominant coverage is very important. So if I have Ryan scream to Suzanne, both of you talking at once, I can't hear you. So what we do is we limit Ryan's voice and we limit Suzanne's voice so that you split right in the middle of your table, and that, therefore you're only carried by one site. That is why, so even though our sites are capable of transmitting in much further distances, we uh, effectively mitigate that by power settings and down tilt. We physically either will mechanically down tilt antennas to point down at the earth, or we electronically down tilt these antennas internal to control that signal. So we start with that. And as needed, if we have a situation where we have just too many subscribers loaded onto one cell site and we can't pull it back any further because we have to cover this geographic spot on the earth, that is when you start to implement other things like small cells that you heard in the rights of way of the telephone, companies that, in your jurisdiction also have to go through your governmental approvals as well. We don't have a lot of small cells in Portsmouth. And the reason that we don't have a lot of small cells is because of our spectrum depth, right? So our average subscriber enjoys just north of 112 to 114 megabit per second on their cell phones right now, download speeds. So if you had an AT&T phone in front of you today and right now, and you did a speed test, you should enjoy near 100 megabits of down speed. Right. So until we get pressure, until we get down into these lower areas of download speeds, is when we start to really look at what do we need to do to manage the capacity, because both follow the same type of trajectory. When you start to have a capacity problem, you instantly start to have download problems, right? Your phone is spinning. You can't get to a website you want to get to. You can't stream a video you want to. That's really what everybody's about now. So it's become not so much a coverage game in the world today as it is a capacity game, trying to keep up with all the applications and the things that people are using their phone. Now, that's not to say that we don't have some coverage challenge, and particularly in Portsmouth. I can't disagree with some of the areas that were in the survey. Our survey, I think, generally is a fair depiction of how our network plays in Portsmouth today. I won't disagree with it. There's a lot of repetition in there, right? A lot of people said South End. A lot of people said on this road. Some people said I-95 Peace area, which we're caring for. Some people said in-home. You heard Ryan talk about, our ability to cover in-home type environments with some products that we offer. We can't cover every home everywhere all the time, right? I mean, it's just not feasible. So what I want you to, if nothing else, what I want you to leave from AT&T today is that we are spending a significant amount of money in your city today without needing governmental approvals, and that is by adding the spectrum that we've purchased into the network. Have you froze on me?
We got knocked off again and we restarted again, so I don't know
Okay.
why.
I don't know. I don't know where you left off, but I'm like, Ryan's not moving anymore. But- so, uh, what
Oh,
did you
yeah.
hear last?
I think it was just a little bit. It was 15 seconds, something like
Right,
that.
right. It was
That's
very
the
short.
gist of it.
Okay. So anyway, the most important thing that we are doing from an organizational standpoint today, from a network perspective, is supplementing the spectrum that the customers are using by adding this. Every site in Portsmouth will have 100 megahertz, which is a very substantial block of frequency of 5G within the next 3 weeks to 6 weeks. We're in the process of putting that in play right now. So some of those complaints, or I'll say, survey questions that you sent out to the communities had to do with, capacity, right? They said in times I'm able to, do what I want with my cell phone, and then in other times, I'm not able. So one thing to understand as well is that when a network gets capacity constrained, it shrinks. So what happens is it's almost a self-preserving mode, by the network to say, okay, I can't accept any more traffic. So even though there may be RF signal there, if there's no signal, did you go away again?
Nope, we're
No,
good.
no.
We're good.
I'm like, Ryan, you got to keep moving.
All right,
So,
I'll keep moving.
so
Just
if
give him a
there's
heartbeat.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, if there's no capacity to give, right, it will appear in some cases as if you don't have signal, right? Because the network will continue to shrink to provide capacity in its best ability. So when you provide the capacity of the coverage that you don't have this shrinkage. So as people come into Peace Air Force for an air show, that site will shrink right down to serve that customer base that falls underneath it. Looks like you're like,
No,
No, we're good.
no.
okay.
I gotta keep
So
moving.
so anyway, I don't want to keep rambling, but generally speaking, the portions of the significant monies that we're driving into your community today have to do with this spectrum ad. In some cases, where we're doing this spectrum, it does require that we get building permits because we're adding additional antennas or radios to the towers. But in many cases today, we're able to do it via software, so you don't even know that we're doing it. Um, we don't have to date any governmental issues with your city or township or any type of roadblocks today that are in front of you that is preventing me from putting network assets in there. Okay, so as all providers, we look across the network in Portsmouth, from my perspective, from our key network performance indicators, from our down speeds, from our coverage footprint, is extremely healthy in the city of Portsmouth. That doesn't say that there aren't, small pockets of concern, but we try to address those best we can via, cell shaping, changing antenna, azimuths and where we point it, by down tilting, as I talked to earlier, but mainly on adding the capacity without adding assets. So I don't have to go by Walmart and put a small cell in, is kind of what I'm saying. I can just add this spectrum that we've paid a lot of money for and put it in play, and provide the same amount of capacity. So, in general, that's really, what I have to present. I'll certainly, I don't have a whole lot to present to you because I don't have a whole lot of things going on in the city of Portsmouth right now, but I can certainly answer and entertain any questions that you may have, whether they be technical, whether they be specific to the Portsmouth area. I'm very well versed, across the technical portion of the network. So anything that you may want to ask, I'll be glad to answer.
I always have questions. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned capacity, is obviously, kind of adjusting everything to maintain capacity.
Yep.
And so for the higher frequencies, you're going to gain capacity as well. So all the stuff in the FR2 bands, so your high frequency stuff. But part of the issue with high frequency is that range really collapses. And to your earlier point about, getting through the buildings and all that sort of stuff, that, starts to become an issue. So getting kind of physical locality to the handset is good, is more important with the higher frequencies. Yep, if I'm understanding the network correctly. And,
You are. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was just
thought.
wondering what, if you could kind of give us a view as to where you see things going and what we might be able to do to make things more amenable to
Okay.
getting all that stuff done.
Yeah. So I'll address the frequency aspects that you spoke of. You're absolutely, the best way, and the way I often explain it to people is I have a very deep voice. So and I project very well in front of crowds. So if I were to stand up in front of a crowd of 200 people in a room, you would be able to hear me fairly well. right? Because I can project both in volume, right? That's power, and also the deepness of my voice. That is frequency. So my voice is low. So low band, think of that as low, where maybe a 13-year-old girl would have a higher, or even a boy in puberty would have a higher tone to their voice. That's a higher frequency. They would have to project their volume higher for you to hear. And at some point, it may not even, you might not be able to hear because of the frequency of that. The bodies in the room absorb these frequencies. We all speak in a certain frequency, right? The higher frequency you have, meaning the higher your voice, the louder you have to talk for somebody to hear you. The lower your frequency is, the less volume you need to project your voice. Okay, so let me just set, I'm just setting, and that is all, physics. Now, when you speak to the higher frequencies not traveling as far, that's true. So then you start to look at, okay, how close are the assets to each other? How close is this site to that site, right? And how much have I powered it down so that I don't interfere with another site? Now, what happens is when you have, so we traditionally call that low band, mid band, and high band, right? So you may or may not be familiar with that, right? Low band is your lower frequencies, typically in this world of 600, 700 megahertz, up to 850 megahertz. Mid band is up to the 2000s, and then high band, or C band in this case, is in the 3000 range, okay? What we found is a couple things. Because we don't have interference, and that our new spectrum that we have purchased is so clean that it projects a lot further than a typical mid-band frequency that is being used all over the place. So there has a lot of the penetration, a lot of the distance of travel and how you can use that signal. We really define and we really manage our networks towards interference more than we do power anymore, as I mentioned earlier. So our goal is to have a very clean signal with very low power, right? To have a much better experience. But I will further say that as to the root of your question, how do we manage, I think where you were really heading is, okay, you need more assets to have more coverage because your high band or your higher frequencies aren't covering and projecting where you think they are, or where they could. The real answer to that is that when we add this capacity layer on top of our sites that have low band, it frees up the low band to travel into these areas that you're talking about. So when you don't have the capacity available to you, what happens is your low band has to travel further, get into all of these areas, serve more customers, and then it shrinks. That shrinking effect that I talked to you about before. So that literally pulls the signal back. The way that the cell site and the handset communicate is really based on the uplink signal, the signal from your handset back to our site. And when we have to start covering subscribers that are on the cell edge or further away from the site, that takes more power and more resources, and thereby takes away the capacity of our cell sites. Okay. So when you provide the capacity in a different frequency to handle all of the people in close range and that you can handle, and even in building that's close, it allows that low band then to go out further and reach into these areas that you may not even have had coverage before, because of interference and or cell edge capacity constraints. So that it really makes a huge difference of how much and how far our existing low band signals can travel when we add the capacity layer on top. I don't know if
So
that
the number of
resonates.
bars goes up and the speed goes down because you're using you're using low band or mid band as opposed to high band, right?
Um, Maybe not so much with mid-band, but with low-band for sure.
Yeah.
If you are on cell edge and far away from the service, and the low-band spectrum does not have the breadth or the amount of spectrum that your high band has, you won't enjoy the same speeds. No question about it, right? And the only way around that is to provide more spectrum in closer. So you'd have to duplicate this effort all over the place. But again, when I look at all of the subscribers across the Portsmouth area, they're averaging over 112 to 114 megabit per second. Okay, and that's a real number. It's a real average. So,
One question as far as that average goes, obviously average is nice, but do you guys, I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you can share with us as far as your standard deviations as well, because averages are nice, but knowing that, okay, you've got the vast majority are very close to that average would be potentially more beneficial.
I'm well aware with the statistics and standard
Sorry,
deviations.
I'm sure
Trust
that's
me,
not something you want to
and
share,
fifth
but
percentiles, the whole nine.
Yeah,
And
Bill Gates walked in the room, our average, our average income would go way up.
yeah, I understand, right? But it's really not the case. I listen, it changes every moment of every day, right? Depending upon where the subscribers are. So there's not really a per se answer to your question unless you're talking about a specific moment of time with a specific customer base in a specific area. I can tell you that it's not a Bill Gates situation in Portsmouth. It's not happening because all of our assets have this spectrum across all of the sites. So if I were to have one site that covered, the vast majority of your population in your city that had high band on it and enjoyed, 3, 5, 600 megabit per second speeds. And then the rest of the sites didn't have that spectrum on it, but that average is brought up by that one site because of populated area. I would completely understand your concern. It's not what's happening here. Every one of those sites have those assets and that spectrum available to them. So, again, I can't, and you could have an event that comes in where everybody's speeds, at that given time go down to 20 megabit per second because of the amount of volume. Maybe it's a public service event. Maybe, something goes on that causes a bunch of the FirstNet community to come in, the public responders, the police, the fire to start, absorbing some of the capacity that's available there because of whatever mission control, situations are happening. All of those events will happen. But on average, every day, day in and day out, the customers, that are in coverage, have a very decent, in my opinion, through statistical information, have a very decent experience in your city. I don't know if
I mean,
you disagree with that. If
I don't. I have to say, looking at our survey, which is definitely, there are a lot less sample points on ours than anything that you guys would generate with your system. But yes, it seemed that the vast majority of people that were having less than optimum and willing to share that were not AT&T customers. So I think that, so that the vast majority was not a problem. And I guess while it's one of the things I guess I'm thinking about long term is not just obviously you have pretty good service. If we can have some sort of an ability down the road, and we're deviating a little bit from what you're saying, Michael, but maybe having situations where we can be a catalyst to get, if there are complaints or problems that people are having, and for whatever reason they're not able to, they're falling off your radar. If we can have a way of fast tracking their contact with you guys so that way we can hopefully sort of take a look at what the problem is and maybe try to fix it. Because I know in some capacity we did that when we were, again, you came in a little late. We used to be just cable and that was it. A lot of times if people are having problems with Comcast, we would be able to sort of fast track their issues because a lot of times their customer support was not always, the first tier was not always the best for first tier. So, again, this might be something a little more beyond what we can sort of agree to, but it would be nice to be able so that if we can facilitate conversation or, sort of customer problems being solved, if for whatever reason the normal way of getting them solved is not working for them.
So the real question is, may I email you when and if, we identify
Yes.
future problems or we get a call from, or someone, occasionally some people do show up at the meetings
Yep.
and say, hey, I'm having this issue, and we could just pass that on to you, and you could figure out what is the best, whether it goes to some billing customer service or whether it's
Right.
something, and you could help.
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
I'm an external facing role, and it's not always going to go to Michael.
Right.
It might go to somewhere else. It might go to a different department or something else internally. But I'm happy to
Be a point.
take care of that. Yeah, absolutely. As best I can.
Yep.
So,
And it occurred to me that maybe we were losing the Zoom because it was going to sleep. The device was going to sleep because it's not, usually we're doing Teams from here, not Zoom.
okay.
So if you're wondering why I keep moving the mouse, it is in part
Keeping it
because
awake.
thinking maybe that was the issue.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Try to,
Yep.
Troubleshooting.
Yeah.
Live troubleshooting.
exactly.
Michael, what we
Say,
would you indulge?
I will.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
will say that to the degree that you bring forth stuff to Ryan that is network related and it comes to me, Ryan and I work all the time. I mean, so it will come direct to me and then in turn goes direct to the management and the performance engineers. I won't say that I want to hear, one-offs every week because, you know what I'm saying, right? But to the degree that we have something to solve, we're more than happy to work together to try to come up with resolution there, right? And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and I think as far as just to understand for me too, I think a lot of times I work IT and there are some people that they have one small problem, they throw up their hands, oh, I can't solve.
Yeah.
What I would like to try to be able to do is sort of let it be known that, hey, there is an additional option available to them so that hopefully we can get them, so, rather than having situations where people want to give up soon, a little sooner.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's all.
And we can put the information that Ryan sent me
Right.
up on the website like we did with Verizon. If you're having issues, here's the Verizon
Yeah.
information. So
Right.
it's kind of
Yeah,
going
okay.
direct to the
So maybe
solutions.
not just your
Yeah.
contact, but that, give
Yeah,
them,
it's not your contact.
not your specific contact.
Oh, yeah.
But they,
But if they do have a specific problem, they come to you and you think it's
Right,
worthy,
exactly.
I'm more than happy
Yes,
to
yes.
accept that.
Shoot it to wherever it
And
needs
and
to
if
go.
you'd like, I can also try to get our customer support information, and I can send that
Yeah.
to you as well, Suzanne. And so that way, that's online as well.
Sometimes it's just people get frustrated with whatever
Absolutely.
interface, and it's.
They don't know where to go next.
Right. And it can be intimidating. You don't want to dial a phone number and it
Yeah.
kind of goes nothing. But I can. I think we've got a good customer support system. But I will send that email or that link to you as well, so that can go up as well, so they have additional resources. Yeah.
I think
And
also very important you put those 3 links up that Ryan
Yep.
shared, right? Because those are they're customer facing. People can get to them, but if you have them handy, for
Yeah.
your city, it's
Yep.
it's really good information.
Right.
I'm
Would
ready.
you mind indulging a personal curiosity?
Uh-oh.
And that is N48 Citizen Band Radio Service, CBRS.
Yeah,
Are you guys doing anything with that?
we are. And it's specific to specific customers, right? So we are not actively going out and selling CBRS, right? As an example, Walmart is installing CBRS in many of their locations.
Mhm.
Okay, they're in the process of trying to. I don't want to say every one of their locations, but they're doing some trials where they are getting very serious about putting CBRS in. We have other billionaires, as an example, that have mansions that want to put the stuff in. Disney, places like that, right? So for folks that don't know, CBRS is essentially a band that you can install as a consumer that's LTE based, that is its own network that we connect into our core, through various ways, and we hand in and out of it to our commercial network. So we do not maintain the CBRS network. That is done by others, but we interface with the CBRS network. So when a customer, in a big facility is typically where you'll see it used, right? That has high usage, again, like a Disney or a Walmart, where they want to run all kinds of applications, for coupons and customer facing stuff that they want to do, right? That eats up a lot of, network resources. In those cases, we have to work with them to connect that CBRS system to the AT&T system. And that's the same no matter what carrier you are. Other places are like Syracuse University was one of the front runners in building out a system where we did a trial with them as one of the first CBRS systems to interface with the AT&T network. So I was part of that, right? Where they wanted to do their whole campus as well as the Syracuse Dome. So that was, so we do deal with that. I don't want to, keep rambling on, but
No.
but that's how we
Yeah, my
interface.
motivation is, that's the old, kind of the citizens band radio thing, right?
Right.
And so that's, there's a big part of spectrum that's, theoretically public access.
Yep.
And, rather than the billionaires kind of owning it going forward and Walmart owning it going forward, it would be nice that smaller businesses could get involved, or, or individuals that are not as wealthy as Bill Gates, right?
Right.
So would you have some pointers for us to kind of explore that conversation further?
Um, yeah, I'll take a note and try to, I really deal with CBRS, as I mentioned, on the interface side, right? Not on the procurement. How do I get it? How do
Yeah.
I transmit it? But I think I can probably through Ryan, I'll provide you some resources that may be able to get you there, because you don't have to be a billionaire, you don't have to be a Gates, right? You don't have to be, it depends on the size of the system, right? Of what you want to do, but typically, there's pretty high cost for the equipment. There's pretty high cost for the implementation of the equipment, because you hire some company to go and put this in, right? And then what I don't like about it, I'll be, straight and forthcoming with you, is that there's this if you're an AT&T subscriber, as an example, and you put in a CBRS system, right, and your experience isn't good, people come to AT&T and say, your service is terrible or you have a problem. And 99.99% of the time, it's a CBRS problem that we don't control. So we don't necessarily love it as a network provider. I'm not putting it down, but
Yeah.
it's very difficult. The management of what's really broke becomes very difficult and very complex. And it's often the CBRS side, because it has to be, it's set up internal to a building or a facility, just like cell sites are set up outside, right? So you have these multiple nodes within a house or within a business that really need a lot of management, and they really need a management provider to help people through that. And then there's all types of parameters that need constant manipulation and things to interface with these commercial networks, so that you have a seamless experience going in and out. That's really where it becomes a problem.
And Wi-Fi's, complex too, right?
I don't, I'm not putting it down, right? I'm
Yeah.
just, there's no question, Wi-Fi is also complex like that. Yep.
Okay. And the other is, are you responsible for the fixed wireless or the fiber network at all as
Um,
well?
I am not, but because I don't have any fixed wireless in my footprint, right? So there is no fixed wireless footprint within the 6 states of New England through AT&T. But I work with peers and help. I have a lot of dealings with the fixed wireless network. So you have something in particular? Um,
Um, Nothing to burden you with right now,
okay.
other than just to get a vision of where you guys are going technically.
Um, okay. Yeah. So. I don't know that, I mean, I can certainly field any questions and, but I am not the front runner expert on, our fiber fixed wireless, well, it depends what you're calling fixed wireless, right? Are you calling fixed wireless a fiber backbone environment? Are you calling fixed wireless, um, a a wireless receiver on a facility that then in turn converts to Wi-Fi within a home,
Of course,
or
it's all of that stuff, right? It's
right? Yeah.
wireless,
So,
it's wireless in a fixed place.
yeah.
It's
So
non-mobile wireless.
yeah. So, to a degree, I do play in the fixed wireless space, depending upon, what product we're talking about, right? AIA is a prime example of that Ryan mentioned earlier. That's a fixed wireless product, right? You're taking the air, interface from my network. We're putting it onto a box that is then converting over to internet. So, yes, I guess I am playing in the fixed wireless space, but not the wireline fiber space, right?
Correct.
I guess is what I was answering to.
Okay.
But I'll be glad to, if you have specific things that you have question about. I mean, this
I'll
probably
bug
isn't a
Ryan
forum.
for contacts.
Yeah, this probably isn't a forum, but certainly I can probably point you to if I can't answer what you might have in that relative to that.
I appreciate it.
Let me suggest this. First, we should check in with Ash, make sure he doesn't have questions. The city council budget hearing starts at 6.
Okay.
And in the ideal world, I will be downstairs
Okay.
at 6.
Yep.
We can always push off the other parts of the agenda
Right.
since we're
Sure.
missing,
Yep.
Lewis,
Yep,
and Gary
and
have to
Gary.
leave. And
Yeah.
so just know there's no requirement that we get
Okay.
to these other items. We can finish with AT&T.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
And then we'll
In fact,
just
in
carry them
regards
to the
other
next meeting.
items. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Ash, do you have any, I know you may be traveling, but I wanted to make sure if you had questions.
Um, great information. I was listening, learned a lot today. If I have any question, I'm sure I will. I will go through, pass it through you, and then you can pass it
Great.
to the party. Yeah, so I definitely very good information. That I'm familiar with some of the technologies, but definitely I will have some questions about basically mostly coverage. So yeah, I'll go through. I'll pass that through you, and then you can pass it over.
That sounds good. All right. Safe travels, Ash.
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh,
Yeah, move the mouse. There you are. You're back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Or Ash, I think, dropped off. So I think
Yeah.
maybe that was it whenever Ash.
Oh, sure, interesting.
Right.
Yeah, okay. We put in our IT ticket though.
All right. How much time do you need to get down the stairs?
Just a couple minutes.
All right, okay.
That's
All right. Are we good?
Yeah, I'm happy to pass on additional questions,
Right.
and
No problem.
It's not a one-off, yeah.
No, my past life was in constituent services, so I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent.
this was really great.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes.
both of you. Every time I
Right.
learn a little more. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
it's a
Yeah.
complicated
Yeah.
space, but we're adding a lot, as Michael said, just reiterating, we're adding a lot of
Go on.
Okay.
I think that's a sign,
But we
Michael.
should, yeah.
I know. I was like, there you go again.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe it's not that because I was moving the mouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Well,
very, very nice to meet everybody. And,
Thank you very much.
any further, questions or technical information that, we can provide or I can hook you up with or do my best to handle all that. And we'll certainly, don't want to make this a one and done, right? If you have, particular group issues that come up where everybody says, hey, we all have a problem here. You obviously have a problem, and certainly address it best we can, right, within our constraints of what we have going on and the timing to get stuff done. So I very much appreciate your time and the ability to meet you folks. It was a good meeting, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let me
All right.
end the record, get it going to the cloud.